everybody, a warm welcome to another interview on Wisdom from North. I'm Jannike, and today I'm excited to be here with Mark Rosenfeld. Mark is a dating and a relationship coach from Brisbane, and he's passionate about empowering women and help them take control over their love life and find the man of their dreams. And Mark is also the author of Make Him Yours, and he has a very popular YouTube channel with nearly 400,000 subscribers. Hello Mark, how are you doing today?
Hey Jannike, how you doing? I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me in today.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because I recently discovered your work and noticed how much you are helping women truly understand their value and setting boundaries. And it is something I find very interesting when it comes to personal development and spiritual expansion, because when it comes to relationships and dating, that's truly, I feel, when we get to know ourselves, when we get to see our patterns that we perhaps weren't aware of, and where we understand what's important to us and where we're not standing in our power. And I also have noticed, and I don't know if this is probably a generalization, but in Norway I see a lot of powerful women that are following their calling, which I'm very passionate about, either in being an artist or an actress or a spiritual leader or a coach. A lot of them are single, and I've been wondering about why that is. And I still feel that we need to educate ourselves a bit more about this dynamic between, the feminine and the masculine, and how we each can stand in our power and really be fulfilled inside before we kind of go into a relationship. And I also think a lot of women are seeking really conscious men, and that's why I think it's so lovely to see more coaches like you talking about the masculine energy, teaching women actually what is important to you, so we can just understand a bit more. Because for us, men is a mystery, and for you, probably women is a mystery.
100%. 100%.
But before we go into relationship advices from you and go deeper, I would love to hear about your story and how did it happen that you became a relationship and dating coach?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually grew up myself. I grew up from kind of a shy background. I always had fairly conservative parents, and it meant that when high school kind of came along, I was kind of the shy kid, didn't really put myself out there, and never really took full ownership of my sexuality and sexual side. And that obviously meant that I didn't really connect with women so well throughout the years of high school, and found myself withdrawing a lot, with a lot of shame around that. And kind of happened that, I think I woke up at the age of 20, 21 and just kind of decided, this can't continue this way. I'm not a bad person, but I have no connections with women, no real confidence, and it's bloody lonely, to be honest. It wasn't a sex thing so much. It was just this is lonely. Man, this sucks. So I decided at that point I was really going to put myself out there, and I did. And I went out a lot, and forced myself to start to learn about women and to meet women. And in doing so, eventually started to get some confidence up, learn a few things, and started working with men who were struggling with the same thing. I did this for a couple of hundred nights, and of all things, eventually I pushed myself even further and decided to get into stripping.
Oh.
Of all things. Yeah. So,
I didn't see that
one
coming.
end of the comfort zone to the other.
Wow.
And then I got myself a girlfriend, and throughout that time just interacted with so many women, and relationships just fascinated me, and I talk a lot about that stuff because I was just really curious. And I was actually studying to be a vet at the time, a veterinarian. So that was kind of my day job. But in my side time, I'd always when I wasn't dancing, I was fascinated by relationships. And it just eventually came around that I learned more and more, and just had such a good vibe with women that eventually, when one female woman asked me for a program, I said, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. I've worked with a lot of men, I'll give it a try working with you. And I actually really enjoyed it. It was just so good seeing her light up. And do you know what it was? I recognised a lot of the loneliness that I had felt in her. The same feelings of, it's not really about the sex, I just it'd be good to have some companionship, resonated in her. And the more I spoke to women, the more I realised that was more their pain. So weirdly enough, I identified a little bit better with the pain that women went through than the pain that men often go through, which is often around sexuality and inadequacy in that area. So yeah, one thing just sort of led to another. I started creating content, and here we are 5 years later. People seem to really enjoy it. I've had the pleasure of working with some wonderful clients, and yeah, it's been really beautiful. I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface, honestly, but it's been a beautiful journey for the past 5 years, 5 and a bit years.
I love how you speak about that women have a light that they bring to a man's life. That's really beautiful. And that you're saying it's not really about the sex. Like a man, can get sex. Like that is not the real value that the woman brings. Can you talk a little bit about this light that we bring to a man's life?
Yeah, of course. It's that beautiful light of feminine energy that a man is just never going to get from his buddies, right? It's that belief in him. It's that support for him and his purpose and his cause. It's that emotional safety space that she creates, where even when no one else is in his corner and and life's not fully behind him or things aren't working out, there's this energy that he can vibrate with, and he feels that empowered feminine. And it resonates within him. If I'm with my girlfriend, she brings me into my body, or she brings me into play, or she brings me into her senses. She's very intuitive. She's very present. And these are things that when I'm in a structured, masculine, rigid lifestyle, it's a real gift to just have that light stop and shine and be in my life. And any guy who's lost a girl that he really cared about, any man who's lost a woman that he really cared about, sure, there might be some short-term distraction, a rebound, something silly like that. But inevitably, in the long term, it's almost always the man that sits at home kind of in the darkness, feeling what he lost. And there's even science to back this up, where they talk about how men always perceive their previous relationships with a greater sense of grass is greener, just better in general, than do women. And I really believe it's about this energy that men almost don't realize sometimes until it's gone.
Huh. And you also speak about being vulnerable. That is something that it's hard for us to do often, but it's very important to actually be vulnerable and show who you are. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a massive, massive piece. And I'm glad you brought that up, because so often, in work, and this is true for me as well, really anyone, vulnerability is not really rewarded. Right? If you're weak, if you're indecisive in the hospital, if you're perceived as weak in the courtroom, if you cannot take a stand as CEO, you get shot down darn quick in any sort of professional environment. So you have to build a communication style that is built out of walls and invulnerability, that's built out of solid barriers, basically, that's built out of people respecting you, people seeing you potentially as competition and being okay with that. Things that basically, I don't want to use the word protect you, but things that really have you in a solid place that mean you're not weak and vulnerable at work. But the interesting thing about romantic communication and even connection in general is, if you think about, when you're with your best friend, what's the difference between the way you speak to your best friend and the way you speak to a corporate equal at work? You're a lot more vulnerable. You tell them a lot more things. You let the guard down. You just show weakness around your best friend. You have no problem. She just accepts it. And it's the same in intimate relationships. And if you bring the same style of communication from the work to intimacy, you'll get respect, and you may even be seen as a competitor. But men don't typically want to sleep with their competitors, right? They want to fight them. It's like competition. It's like, oh, me man, okay, let's go. Men want to sleep with someone who they can vulnerably connect with. And it's those, I think Mark Manson says it best. He says it's the rough edges that people fall in love with. It's the rough around the edges. So when you're showing, the irony is the same showing of insecurity, which would get you nowhere at work, is actually what wins in intimacy. And that's true for both men and women.
That's interesting. I often, think about dating as this this playing the cards right in a way, like leading up to a relationship. It's so much to do with doing it right in a sense, and so much of a feeling of failure if it doesn't work out, and I think that's often when we're afraid of being vulnerable, because we're afraid of being too needy, or that chasing the man instead of the man chasing us, and then we put up this mask to be appear unavailable in a sense, and it becomes this mismatch, and finding that balance is difficult. Like how do you find that balance? So like, yes, being vulnerable but not being too needy, so the man is like, okay, this is not interesting.
Yeah, I think vulnerability often gets connected with neediness, and they don't have to be the same thing. In fact, I feel that's a bit of a stereotype, in that, a simple form of vulnerability is expression of passion. I had one client vulnerability is always seen as like weakness or insecurity, but I had one client, for example, she's very excited to be getting into med school. She's super enthusiastic about it. It's like her life's work, she's thrilled. But she didn't want to tell anyone. And the reason she didn't want to tell anyone, because that felt vulnerable to her, in that if she told someone and that was shot down, that would be like she was being shot down, basically. So vulnerability isn't always a soft spot. It can be any sort of emotional expression. Play is vulnerable. Have you ever seen an animal be stressed and playful at the same time?
No.
Animals only play when they're extremely relaxed, and they roll on their backs, and they're just vulnerable, and you can just watch them for hours, right? So it often gets associated with needing something, like, I'm being vulnerable, I need you to tell me you love me, I need you to... And that's really a very small piece of vulnerability, and it's actually a form of neediness that's not really vulnerable. It's more of a... In fact, when you really dive into it, being needy is actually an avoidance of vulnerability, because you don't want to sit right where you are and risk rejection. So you move forward to try to seek a safe place, to seek safety, rather than, if you stay where you are and let the man come to you, you're actually more vulnerable to rejection, because there is a chance he may not come. So true vulnerability is actually staying where you are. It's not a needy thing. It's not moving towards him.
Is it important, do you think, to, speaking of neediness, in a sense, express your needs? Like, I need this. It's important for me that we can have deep conversations. It's important for me that you don't wait, 24 hours before you text me, for instance.
Yeah, 100%. I always like to approach these conversations as teammate conversations. So often it's like a transaction. It's like, I want this from you, or you want this from me, and it becomes like an exchange where we're bartering for who can get the best side of the deal, which isn't really how a relationship should feel, right? It's I express where I'm at. Like, hey, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm looking for. It's not right or wrong, but it's real for me. What about you? What are you expressing? What are you looking for? Cool. Thanks, teammate. Now, how can we find a compromise that works for both of us together? What works for both of us? You never want a man to feel like it's not his choice, right? Because that's where you should be giving me more affection. You should be texting me more. He's like, ugh, and it's empty text, right? And then he just stops doing it because he doesn't even want to. It has to come from a choice, but that's where you and him as teammates come together. And you say, this is me, and maybe I have an anxious attachment style, so I'm letting you know, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm looking for in a relationship. What are you looking for in a relationship? Oh, this. Cool. Okay, how can we find a way here that works for both of us? This is your teammate. This is someone you work kind of with, not. It often feels against. You want to be with.
And that feels like more natural down the line in a sense. How about in the early stages, if something is really important? Let's say that the woman wants a child. That's super important. It's non-negotiable. Is that something to bring up, on the first date, for instance?
I mean, you could. You'd have to do it delicately. But yeah, if you're talking about life visions, sure, you bring it up. Where it goes wrong is if you're talking about having a child with him. Because the guy's going to be like, I don't even know you. It's the first date. Why are you asking me about? This is too much. You definitely can't know that you want a child with me because you don't know a thing about me. So if you're just talking about your life vision, and you could definitely do that in a way where I'm saying, I meet someone, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm really excited. Life's going well. I'm excited to move to America next year. I'm going to spend my life there. And yeah, I'm going to work on this project, and that's going to be cool. Like, what's your vision? Do you see how you're not feeling compelled to move to America with me? You're just aware. You're like, cool, if I keep dating him, that's going to be a thing.
Are there some rules when it comes, I don't know, in this area, when to say I love you, like when to, move towards a relationship? Do you have any is there any rules, or are there no rules?
I don't think there's any rules. I do think it's wise to know what's healthy and what healthy and unhealthy look like. Because if I hear a client who says, he told me he loved me within 3 weeks, 99% of the time or more, there's going to be some emotional distractionism happening in there, which is either someone love bombing, which is where someone goes in really fast to kind of sweep you off your feet and get you addicted to them. Or he's kind of just, I've seen it where a guy just wants to escape his problems. And a good rush of dopamine from feeling in love and giddy is a great way to escape your problems. So there's no rules. I think you have to take it in the context of what is healthy in terms of the human psyche and experience. Yeah, that's probably all I'd really say on that.
And you talk about, for women, choosing a man that chooses her. And that often is that often women, or some women, tend to go for the man that they cannot have, and they're patient and they're not seeing that they're actually not standing in their power. Is that something you see a lot?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Intimacy is real scary. The deeper you go, the greater risk you're at of rejection, of being left, of losing a loved one. There's a whole bunch of fears that come with intimacy. And especially if you have grown up with love figures or parental models where you're pretty used to someone who's not around most of the time, it is much safer to just kind of stay in fantasy about the emotionally unavailable guy than it is to actually dive into intimacy with the emotionally available guy.
And do you think that the woman then needs to work on herself or on herself before she actually is pursuing a relationship, that needs to be the focus before she's actually going out to date, to go back to the childhood, see the relationship with the father or the mother, and really resolve that first?
Yeah, great question. I don't like to overdo it personally. I do think some awareness is good. And if you know what your patterns are, what your typical is, then yeah, go into it a little bit and just understand this is my normal. This is what I typically feel attraction for, and this is what I'm going for. So the first two things I do when I'm working with a client is we do a week or two deep dive into her history, and then we create a vision in sort of the third-ish week. But beyond that, I kind of want her feet on the ground, and I want her practicing. Because I think, I hear some coaches where they say take a year off, and there's occasional times where I think that's beneficial. But there's only so much you can learn about playing the piano when you're not actually having access to a piano, right? You can sit there and read theory books until forever, but you're only really going to have real confidence playing the piano when you actually sit down and start punching a few notes and making some mistakes. So I think it's useful to go through. It's good to know your own patterns. It's good to know why and do some healing around that. But I'm not a big advocate of, 12 months off men. And unless you're obviously recovering from a major loss or something like that, in which case 100% do it on your own time. But if you're feeling single, I think the time is better invested in building a little bit of awareness and then making some mistakes and kind of getting your hands dirty than it is staying out for too long.
What do you think about online dating? I saw that you had a video about it, whether that is, works or the pros and cons of online dating, and which is, very, how do you say that? Well, now is the time for online dating in this Corona time.
Yeah.
We can't meet each
Corona
other.
is the time. Yeah. Yeah, great question. I think it's very good for what it's good for, which is there's no such thing as online dating. It doesn't exist. But there is such thing as online meeting. And if you think of them as meeting services, they are excellent because they give you a huge amount of access. They give you lots of practice with different people. And, you could meet 10 times in one night what our grandmas or grandpas would have met in a week or even a month. But you then have to be able to use them only for what they're good for, which is meeting, and get off them quickly into real dating. And where a lot of people get bogged down, and especially, working with women, I see this a lot with women, is bogged down, texting, emotionally unavailable guys. The truth is, whenever you have that many people in a meeting environment, you've got the whole ocean, you've caught every fish in the ocean, you're going to have a lot more, ocean soot to sift through. So as a meeting service, it's fantastic. But the real skill in online meeting is to be able to just pick out the salmon quickly and easily and filter kind of the cream to the crop, the cream of the crop to the top. And if you can get talking to those guys who are on there, they're a small percentage, but a small percentage of 1 million is still a lot of guys. And if you can get through to those people, it's a fantastic service for doing that. But it can be super frustrating. I have a lot of clients that come to me that feel they're wasting so much time on it, and we really need to kick their butt with the way they filter and how ruthless they are, honestly, on there, but ruthless in a way that keeps them open to good guys. Because the temptation is, just, you write on your profile, bugger off if you're here to waste my time, or something a bit negative like that. And good guys obviously aren't going to go for that. If I see a woman's profile and she says no fuck boys, no time wasters, that's not making me think, because I'm a good guy. Oh well, I'm not that. I'm going to go for her. It's just like she seems a bit jaded. I think I'll go to the next person or the next swipe.
Makes sense. How did you meet your own love? Was that
we met when I was on a trip. We met when I was on a trip overseas, actually. So, I'd had a breakup. My cat's just joined me in here. Thanks for that, Lucy. I'd had a breakup about 6 months earlier, which I took pretty tough. And I'll do a video about that at some stage, actually. But after that, we were on a trip and we went to a concert together, and things just kind of grew from there.
Beautiful. I'm constantly asking about these rules, but do you have any advice on how long it's healthy to take a break before from one relationship that you've been in and moving over to another one? Is there some sort of advice there?
Yeah, great question. Obviously, there's no single time frame that's going to work for everyone. I think one thing that's important is that you don't necessarily have to wait until there's no feelings left for the previous person. A lot of women feel like, I'm totally still hung up on this previous person. And your brain is always going to go back to that previous person just because that's the last person.
Right.
Every time you get lonely, it's probably going to go there. And then you might feel fine for 3 months and then you have another night crying about him again. I remember with my own ex, it was obviously the first few weeks really sucked. And then after that, it's more spotty. And then 6 months later, I broke down in an airport after not thinking about it for 6 months. It's just that just hit me out of nowhere for some reason. But no, I usually say make sure you are not distracting. So make sure you feel through the pain of it. You feel the loss, you feel the sadness, you ride the emotional storm for at least as long as it takes to get that. A month for a shorter relationship, several months for a longer relationship, whatever it takes to really settle yourself, process the pain, don't dodge it. And then from there, it's nice to start out slow, just start out casual, just meeting people and kind of, go from there. There's no specific processing time, I think, that you must stick to. but I would say don't be so short that you're distracting, and not so long that it's dragging for years because, I still have some feelings. You're going to, and that's pretty normal.
I saw you have so many great videos on your YouTube channel, and I saw one of them, and I think it was very popular. It was seen by like 1 million people, so apparently that is what was interesting for women. It was about the mindset, like 5 sexiest mindsets that women have. And the first one was actually having an exciting life. Which I thought was kind of a brilliant idea. At the same time, like as a woman, I felt a bit pressured. Like, oh my goodness, I have to create this wonderful life in a sense. And can't I just be me? Can't I just be vulnerable with my life or whatever it is? But can you speak a little bit about that? What you meant in that video and why that is like really like attracting to a man?
Yeah, it's really about the energy that you're bringing in. So I think one of the misinterpretations of that video, and it was one of my first videos, so something that's worthy of clarification, is a lot of introverts said to me, this isn't for introverts. What do we do as introverts? We don't live exciting lives. And I think I almost gave the impression that it's like partying and going out and rock climbing or abseiling or whatever it is. And you can do those things if you love them, for sure. They're definitely going to work. But really, it's about the energy you come across for the things that you do. So if you just love your knitting, if you're just really content, you just get excited for the next lesson and you just want to share energy on that, awesome. If you're just so damn happy with your existence as it is and you share energy with that, your awesome life through gratitude could be like walks through the park each day. It's not the things, it's the energy that's related to the things that the guy feels when he's in your presence.
Yeah, it seems like it boils down to really be content with yourself and being honest with who you are, being authentic, and caring about your own needs and loving yourself. I think the more you love yourself and the more you are comfortable in your own skin, the more you're not so seeking approval from the man, expecting him to fulfill you, to be that part that makes your life beautiful. It's more like you have something to bring, but you are confident in yourself. That is at least the way I see it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And being authentic sounds easier than it is, right? We all have to peel off the layers to get into more of our own, what makes us authentic and what makes us, our different emotions, our different likes, asserting our wants and needs and those kinds of things. But the more you can do that, the more you can unwrap that for yourself, the more you'll find that you'll just vibe men who are in your lane, and the guys that aren't won't like you. And that's great. That's the whole point of it. Where people can fall into trouble with dating advice, which is men or women, is thinking that I'm going to apply this to get this particular person. And of course, particularly if that person is not very healthy, that's going to mean that you're bending in such a way that you attract an unhealthy person. And what attracts an unhealthy person is usually not that healthy, right? So you can take steps backwards with dating and attraction advice if you really try to key it in and do the one thing that person wants. The best application of this advice is always stay in your lane. Like you say, be more authentic, more expressive, more of yourself, own more parts of you, and you'll naturally vibe in really healthy guys who are right for you by doing that.
Right. Do you think there's a one, or are there many ones for each one?
I'm not a huge fan of the one myth. I mean, from a logistical standpoint, so many people meet their ones in high school, or college, which if you look at the actual odds of that as a greater population is highly, highly impossible. But more to the point, every relationship is a learning and a lesson. And so I don't necessarily see, you spend a lot longer with one person, and that's what we refer to as the one. But the one before that led to the one. And the one before that led to the one before the one. So every relationship has value to me. Every relationship is part of your path, and you can't meet the one without the one before. So I just sort of see each relationship as having its own sense of value, its own challenges, its own problems, its own gifts, its own gratitude points, and its own beauty.
Yeah, I like that. And I saw that in one of your videos that you talked about, that your ex is part of your life, is part of your path, instead of the ex being the enemy in a sense. An ex has really helped you become who you are. And
I would not be who I am without my exes. Not in a million years. I owe them everything, and they're all, and my current partner, I wouldn't be who I am without her. So it would be reminiscent to claim that any of them weren't incredibly important for me.
Right, and I think our past generations have been more concerned about, finding that long-lasting relationship, while I can see that one relationship can be really valuable, even though it just lasted 3 months, a year, whatever. It's not like a failure. And I think changing that attitude towards it can really help, because we often compare ourselves with others who have, they're married, but I've had so many failed relationships because they didn't last. But really, you just grew, and like you're saying, maybe getting ready for another that is more like right for you.
Yeah. I remember a client I spoke to, and one of the first things she said I had a failed marriage. She said I had these 2 amazing kids for it. I said, how was it a failure then? And she kind of stopped and was like, if you got 2 beautiful kids from it, you can't really call that a failure. The relationship didn't work out, but gee, there's a lot of success there if you've got great kids, and if that's a failure, it never would have been, the kids never would have been there.
Yeah. So is it a myth that some men are more emotionally unavailable than women? Is that a myth, you think?
Look, there's certainly more obvious examples of it. But that being said, I do see a lot of women who go towards emotionally unavailable men. So you could certainly make the argument that they are therefore more comfortable with emotionally unavailable men, and therefore have elements of emotional unavailability themselves.
That's interesting.
It's certainly more obvious in men, but I can't help but think that if every woman was perfectly emotionally available, every man would probably just step up. So I think it still has to be a thing on both sides.
Right, because the woman is then, it's a mirror that, why is she going towards these unavailable?
Usually, yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, that one.
How do you think we can work with that if a woman, because I see many women do that, go for unavailable men? How do you work with a client that has this problem? Like perhaps she's not even seeing it and she's dating again and again, and the man is the same pattern and she does not see it. Like it's not obvious on the first dates, but then it becomes, the same story.
What was the question? How do you
how do you work with women that have that pattern?
Yeah, I think usually, first of all, helping them identify what's going on. So them being honest about it and saying, okay, this is my normal. Mm-hmm. And it usually means there's a chemistry or a pull for that. Because women who are truly in a centered place they may meet those guys and may even end up on dates with them, but they just kind of get weird vibes and move away from them. So if there's a bit of a chemistry there for those type of guys, then I'd probably say to the woman, okay, we need to, first of all, define the history, which is what you've had. Second, define what you really want and be honest, what is the intimacy you're looking for so that we can clearly see the difference between the two. And then get her out dating and using her intuition to, first of all, just spot the difference. But then what you'll probably find, and I've seen this in a client recently, is the guy really opened up his emotional availability and she started to get more scared. Like he did it on a pivot and he finally said, fuck it, I'm going all in with you, let's do this. And she's like, I've suddenly had this urge to pull away, it doesn't feel as safe. And it was a good example of you've got it, it's a weird feeling. You've kind of got to adjust your nervous system to this person just wants to be here. It's not crazy fanatical thinking about each other all the time. It's just like a best friend that I sleep with. It just feels safe. And it's weird to get used to if you've not had a lot of it before. So exposing yourself to it, adjusting to it, and getting used to this new type of emotional availability is how I'd integrate a client towards that. And we'd probably do some healing between the two just to help that if there was some father healing or stuff that needed to happen there, that can help.
Right. And let's say that you're not attracted to the person you're going out with, but the person is really great and it like fits everything you're looking for, and he's a wonderful man, a wonderful woman. How much time do you feel like you should give this? You're not attracted, but he's great or she's great.
Yeah, I think that's a question you've got to answer on a case-by-case basis, to be honest. I had very little chemistry with my current partner when we first met. When I said we got together before, we did get together at that concert, but we met a trip long before that and we're just friends. So she was attractive, but I was never attracted. And it took us kind of, and I could acknowledge, like, she's beautiful, but it wasn't like a lot of chemistry. It wasn't a pull, We were friends for a long time first. But it grew as I got to know her, and especially once we connected and started dating, there was a trend upwards in the chemistry. So I always say look for the trend. And if there's someone who you could say, this is a pretty attractive person, but this isn't my classic type, then give it a little bit of time. Give it a few dates, give it a couple of weeks, and see if it starts to trend upwards, and if it's just like you getting used to a new high-quality norm. Versus there's other women in this situation who come to me and they say, oh, he's a really great guy. He just meets all my needs. I'm just not attracted to him. And when we actually explore that, he's a needy, nice guy who's actually turning her off because his niceness is his own form of neediness to get her validation, which is actually a total boundary lapse and not someone who's probably going to be healthy right now. So you kind of got to be honest with yourself. Like, why am I not attracted here? Is this someone I just never, ever physically ever bear to see naked? Is this someone who's actually his niceness is coming from a place of neediness? There's just a certain icky, I move away feeling. Or is it like, this person's quite attractive and I'm just not used to being treated this well. This is kind of weird. That's a good opportunity to dive a little deeper and see, okay, maybe I could get used to this. Maybe I just need, he's treating you like with respect, like a best friend, he's an attractive enough guy, you're just not feeling the chemistry. That could be a good opportunity to go deeper and give it a chance.
And I know you speak also about different love languages. Can you speak a little bit about that at the end now? Like, because maybe we sometimes expect, the man to do this or the girl to do this, and then that is not in his or her nature, perhaps.
Yeah. And love languages is something that every couple comes in with a bit of a different coding for. So if you don't know what love languages is, I'm sure you've spoken about it before on your channel, but it's how you receive love. And it's usually to do with your parents and the way they delivered it, what they gave a lot of or what they gave very little of. And it's whether it's touch or spoken words or gifts or quality time. You can actually take a love language test from Dr. Gary Chapman's book. I'm sure you can put the link for that. But yeah, love language is kind of an effect. Think of it as the language of affection, the language of love. And if you don't have the same one as your partner, then it's another teamwork thing to come together on, which is basically if you're, I had one client recently, she said he's been really great, he's been doing acts of service, he's been doing, we've been spending good time together, he's been super physically affectionate, that's been great, he just hasn't been super wordy with me, and that's kind of like my love language. I'm like, cool, well, first of all, make sure you're always giving props for what he is doing, because you always attract more bees with honey than vinegar, so give him a lot of props. Men always want to feel they're doing well, and then kind of create some teamwork around it. The ideal for a man is always if you can give him like a goal task, like something he can, achieve. If you're a quality time person, you could be like, hey, this would be a really cool restaurant to visit. And then, baby, thank you so much for taking me to this restaurant. This is so cool. You did so well with this. Like, this is amazing. So if you can set a goal, men love goals with love languages. and work with him as a team. You know, if you really can't figure it out with doing it that way, just kind of say, hey, like, this is what I'm bringing to the table. You know, this is something I've learned about, this love language thing. I noticed you do this really well, you do this really well. What could I do more of for you? Like, I want to be your teammate in this. And then maybe like, would you balance that out? And what could have, this is something that I would like as well, and something that I would, you give an example, you know, where he did it. Like, I love the other day when you said that, that was so good. That really meant so much to me. You've got to just keep rewarding the good, even if it's really little. And when you work together as a team, you should be able to find some cross-translation if your love languages are quite different.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's all about communication, right? And like, yeah.
Yeah. And I will add that communication for men can sometimes be like sex for women, in that you got to warm us up. Right? So if you're always diving into relationship conversations, it's kind, you know, without any foreplay, without any warm-up, it's a little bit like us just diving into sex without any foreplay, without any warm-up. Those conversations take a bit of emotional brain power for us. And this is why sometimes when you ask the question, I think in your email about, I think it was dating healers. And I remember I used to date a woman who was a healer, and she wasn't, again, this is only a single case example, but I remember she'd always dive into emotional conversations all the time. And I just, it became like too much for me, right? I was like, I just want to be light and have fun most of the time. Like, can we not do this all the time? So you want to warm the guy up when you have these types of conversations. Think of it like you want him to warm you up for sex. Maybe give him a time in the future, or ask him when's a good time to talk, or just let him know, and obviously reward him when he does it.
Yeah, and perhaps you don't, I don't know, I'm just putting it out there. Perhaps you don't need to be able to speak about everything you're passionate about with your partner. Maybe some of the conversations are for your girlfriends or your therapist or...
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're in a society where we're used to our partners being our be-alls and end-alls.
Right.
And that's not really very historical. That's kind of a new thing as we move away from community. So the more community you can keep around, the more, I suppose, natural that would be in terms of human evolution.
Yeah, interesting. Well, thank you so much, Mark. This was fun.
My pleasure. It was so much fun. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Love speaking with you. Yeah, and I'm going to continue following your channel. I'm single myself, so I think there's a lot of great advice there. So thank you so much for your wonderful work.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thank you for watching. If you want to learn more, my channel's there, or I know you've got heaps and heaps of videos on your channel as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Much light from Norway and Brisbane. Bye-bye.